Good day and welcome to this week's episode of Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. I am your host, Rondell, Donawa, attorney at law. Once again, I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to bring the law and you. Of course, you can stream us on WESNCC.com as well as our traditional media and our podcast on all major podcast platforms, Strictly Legal with Rondell, Donawa.com. This is an exciting episode. Of course, sometimes I bring non-lawyers on the set. Experts, and this week we are going to discuss a very interesting topic, a topic that's outside the box. Of course, not many of you may know, but there are forensic accountants in Trinidad and Tobago and the world, right? What do they do? Then my guest here will let you know. Now, the topic today, the role of forensic accountants in criminal and civil investigations. And I have none other than Mr. Stephon Grey, who is a certified fraud examiner with over 20 years experience. He's a certified internal control auditor and a forensic certified public accountant, and he's an educator. He's the executive head of the Caribbean Institute of Forensic Accounting and lead expert and international liaison of its subsidiary CIFA Consulting International. Additionally, he is the head of forensics and investigatory services at Baker and Partners UK, and is a specialist panelist at Streamhouse, Switzerland. And of course, he has worked in a range of areas. He currently sits on the steering committee as an expert facilitator at, and I told him that I will not say the Dutch name, but it is GmbH on behalf of the German Federal Ministry of Economic Cooperation and Development in the provision of following the money to combat illicit financial flows, training to 12 countries. And those countries stem from Africa to Asia. And it's extensive. So I will stop here and I will welcome on set Mr. Stephon Grey. How are you, sir?
Thank you, thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, and thanks.
Yeah.
And thance for agreeing to come on the set. And I always say that this is a noble set where many great minds sat.
Oh,
yes.
I hope I'll get some knowledge when I leave on the chair.
Of course. Now, we are dealing with the discussion of forensic accountants.
Yes.
And basically, I know I said a little bit about you, but may I ask you to introduce yourself and who is Stephon Grey?
Oh, yeah, that's a good job. I don't think that's needed, but I've been in the field of forensic accounting and auditing for the last 22 years. We have worked throughout the Caribbean, even internationally as well, and Africa. So, yeah. That's it.
And of course, you are head of, as we said, the Caribbean Institute of Forensic Accounting. Yes. So can you tell us exactly what is that institute and what role do they play in terms of in the financial world? Yeah,
well, the institute, we founded that in 2009, and it has been responsible for the qualification and training of at least 85% of the forensic accountants from the Caribbean market, and probably a higher portion from the Trinidad and Tobago market, probably about 90-something% of the qualified forensic accountants we have provided training for, and also throughout the Caribbean, a lot of law enforcement agencies and audit supreme agencies we have also provided direct training for as well.
And as we with the topic of, again, forensic accounting, can you just explain that term? What exactly is forensic accounting, and obviously, who is a forensic accountant?
Actually, the term was spent, it used to call it in investigative accounting back in the 70s and 80s. And it turned out it was a Trinidad and Tobago case that caused that expert on that case to rephrase it to say forensic accounting. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So Trinidad Red International.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so Trinidad had a part to play in that whole coining of the phrase, but it's more investigative accounting. We call it to identify the 5 W's: who, what, when, why. So who is responsible for the transaction, what went wrong, why it went wrong, how did it go wrong. So you have to identify all 5 of those things and how much it went wrong by. So one of the biggest accomplishments or targets of a forensic accountant is to quantify what may have been lost. Right? And losses don't mean theft. Right? Losses can mean numeric losses as a result of processes or things that cost-benefit analysis that did not go right. Yeah?
So how does that differ from auditors? Like, because sometimes you hear forensic auditing or internal auditing,
yes,
or persons who audit assets or audit companies.
Well, I mean, for a long time, the audit profession, they had a phrase that they are not responsible to look for things like fraud. I think that has changed now, subject to correction, but they will look at transactional compliance issues and so on. Things to probably deter and to make sure that things are in place. However, the forensic accounting looks at when things really go wrong.
So you all investigate deeply into fraud.
Yes,
fraud
when things
issues.
go wrong. Yes, when things go
Right.
wrong. Losses as well.
Right.
You have to read what caused the loss, because you have things that you may suffer a loss, but it has nothing to do with fraud. Yeah. So any losses.
And these are and the type of clientele that usually engage forensic accountants.
Well, internationally, the number one clientele will be the governments. Right? Then you have the private sector, and then you have the legal sector, because one of the things is, after you have lost all this money, what do you want to do? And the most pertinent answer would be, you want to recover it. Right? So that recovery process is what we call asset recovery. Right? And that's a legal process. Yeah?
And obviously, as we are on that, I mean, I know we will get into the
Yes.
case examples soon, but I recall there was a situation with Petrotrain at the time when governments, I believe, would have changed sometime
Yes.
in 2010, and they did a investigation, and then the government would have filed civil proceedings against individuals of the board.
Yes.
Is it that process would have gone through first the investigatory stage, or using a forensic accountant to arrive at the findings for the government now to move further to sue these individuals? Of course, lifting the corporate veil of the corporate responsibility.
Yes.
And that was an issue in terms of whether or not you can actually lift that veil and sue individual persons of a board and not the company itself.
Right. So
I know it's a mouthful, but yes.
So I'm not familiar with the matter you're speaking of, neither what I try to remember, but the circumstance is this. A company cannot move by itself, right? Someone has to run the company, and that is referred to as fiduciary duties. And if in the running of that company you make decisions that have caused that company to make a loss, good, then internationally you can be sued, right? And that's why you have things like the director's insurance and so on. And not even reaching there, internationally, they'll make you sign something called an attestation, like the United States, where it says, I'm a director, and these are my rules and responsibilities, and if it goes wrong, this is my punishment, in a nutshell. So they actually make you sign to that before, because a company cannot move by itself. It moves on the direction of certain people. Yeah?
And let's get into one. I mean, I know it's twofold in terms of forensic accountants dealing with criminal civil investigation. Let's start with the criminal aspect of things. Can you tell us how important forensic accountants are in the criminal jurisdiction, or how do they investigate in criminal versus civil proceedings?
Well, you can investigate or you could assist.
Yes.
Right? So, as I said, we have been involved in training of law enforcement agencies throughout the Caribbean. And at this present time, we have, as you just read, 12 countries. And when I tally the law enforcement agencies under those 12 countries that we have, that's 82 agencies. Right? So you could assist. So you could quantify what is the loss based on what are the laws have been breached. Good? So to have any loss or have any theft, either policy and procedure has been breached or the law have been breached, or constitution or what have you have rules have been breached. So if it's a law, then you could have the option of going down the criminal situation.
Fraud or
yes, right. So you have the Larceny by Servant Act, money laundering is a law, right? Those sort of things. So you have, so once you have that, if it's a policy and procedure, then that can be down the civil situation. Or you can have laws and or policy and procedures, or laws that breach both criminal and civil. So you have criminal action and civil. You breach the law, that's criminal, but you caused a loss or you stole money, and I want to recover it, that's civil. Yeah? So you can have a combination. Some countries concentrate on the civil aspect of it. As you know, internationally, some countries are more into litigation than the Caribbean region.
Because they are looking at recovery.
Exactly. They are concerned.
If you're locked up in jail or if you're
exactly. They are concerned about the taxpayers' dollars.
Yes.
So their thing will be to get back the funds as priority. They'll probably lock you up after, but the priority is to get back the funds. Some of them have even passed things like your Civil Asset Forfeiture Act. Now, that doesn't put you in jail. It's not a criminal act. In most situations, it's used to recover the funds, but it could work alongside other laws that will cover the criminal side. Yeah? Interesting.
And what skills do forensic accountants bring to the table, in terms of qualifications and stuff like that? I mean, I know we touched on the traditional accountants, but in terms of forensics, I mean.
Forensics? Yeah. Well, qualifications, if you want to be a forensic accountant, you should have prerequisite, that is a previous accounting qualification. However, there are routes that allow you to bypass that because there are different skills in forensics that are needed. For example, there are people who could just interview and extract the truth from persons naturally. Right? The ladies love that program, that course for some reason. And then there are people who are more into security enforcement and surveillance and so on. So you really can't pass them through the accounting formal route. So there are other routes like the fraud examiner route that might take a degree, and there are other routes that might just take some experience, and then you are guided into an anti-fraud profession that also works alongside forensic accounting or hand in hand. Yeah.
And the School of the Caribbean Institute of Forensic Accounting. In terms of the courses, is it that they are the only institution that is accredited to provide certification in forensics?
Yes, we do. We are the training consultants for the Forensic CPA Society of the United States. So we provide the tuition for the students to be able to pass the exams to get their qualification. The qualification is issued out of the U.S., not actually out from us.
And in terms of the courses?
Yes. Well, you have like principles of fraud examination, you have criminal interrogation, you have financial investigations, and you have forensic accounting. That's your four main courses, and within that, you have subtopic cybercrime, asset tracing, asset recovery, a lot of due diligence, a lot of sub-courses that will assist money laundering and so on. So those four topics usually cover the whole gambit of any anti-fraud syllabus.
And the services, and you're saying that the school is multifaceted. So you provide training, you provide a syllabus.
Yes.
And then you also provide services. Mm-hmm. And of course those services, so you would obviously have a cadre of employees or cadre of accountants who would be outsourced to various government and private institutes.
Yes.
So in terms of when you are outsourced, is it that you now enter the institution, whether it is a government building, like accountants, like auditors, right? Auditors set up shop. Yes. So they set up shop where they are, and then they start to pull files
and so on.
Yeah.
Right. Well, that's how it started back in the day. You have your room and you have your files and so on. And then over the years, you realize that files can go missing because it's not a normal audit, it's a serious audit. Files go missing, file rooms get burned down, and so on. So usually, internationally, what we do, we practice the extraction of documents from the start. So you extract the documents out of the compound, and then, so we don't come in again. We extract the documents. And
how that is done?
Well, you can do it covertly. You can,
Right.
you can liaise with the client and get everything you need, right? And take it to a separate location, all right? Because there were times when you call a forensic investigation or forensic audit, and fires take place, right? Fires go missing.
Fires happen. All of a sudden,
the computer system crash, and so on. I'm not speaking about Trinidad, we're speaking overall. Well, you call any name. I haven't called any name, but if your memory is better than mine,
I plead the fifth.
right? And you have the correct suit and so on to do that.
I shouldn't say that.
So it has evolved to extraction.
Yes.
And then you go back and you, from a private location, go through the files and do your work.
And I'm guessing after that extraction, then you could announce that this is a forensic.
Well, the idea of a forensic exercise is for the possible target to be aware of the exercise at the end, not during. Yeah? Because if they're aware before or during, things can be put in place to interfere with the process. So a good international practice is that the target is they know last.
Gotcha.
Right? So for example, I always tell my classes, do you think that, for example, Alan Stanford knew that he was being investigated? If he knew that, he would have, put aside, made better arrangements. Yeah. Obviously, it was a surprise to him. Yeah. So if you watch international news, you realize it's a surprise at the end. Right? The FBI is there. At the end, you're like, oh shucks.
So therefore, it means that. So is it that, like, for instance, that example?
Yes.
Obviously, that's a private institution. So he is the head, honcho.
Yeah.
So in terms of extracting or doing investigation, is it that now the FBI or whomever were investigating would have had to give immunity or something to one of the executives or whoever to get the information? How in that instance where you are the CEO of a company,
yes,
and investigations are being conducted behind your back, how does that happen?
Well, we call it behind your back in the Caribbean. If you understand what it is every organization has a regulatory upline. So for example, if you say that he owned a bank, the bank is reporting to a regulator. That regulator is state. Yeah?
Yep.
And even in developed countries, even though you say you are private sector, the state still has a stake. Because if you are in private sector and you lost $1 million due to fraud, waste, and abuse, that means the state, also lost 25% of that $1 million because you pay taxes on your net profit, and that profit would have been depleted by fraud, waste, and abuse. Yeah? So internationally, they tie everything back to the state. So that's why they could intervene in most, if not all, investigations. Yeah? So there's no need for immunity and stuff like that. They could intercept.
Right. And therefore, they could even intercept covertly, as you say.
Well,
because in this case, it acts as a surprise.
Yes.
If one is surprised that...
Now, it's understood that the target could know during the exercise, but the aim is a good case is to ensure that the target knows the last.
And as we are on certain case examples, could you just provide us with some practical insights in terms of work that you may have conducted in forensic accounting investigation that played a pivotal role in the outcome? In the outcome of the investigation, that is.
Well, we have been involved in cases where there's recovery. One particular Caribbean island, there was a recovery of $50 million. And what happened, instead of the international bodies returning that money, because that money was found in developed countries' banking system. So instead of repatriating it to the government of the day, they just built a children's hospital or hospital like that. So in other words, what they were trying to say is that when you have fraud, waste, and abuse, that also depletes your economy and your services to your country. So they put the money directly back into the country's services for their taxpayers.
And that's, okay, fraud based by abuse.
Yeah. Well, call it fraud, waste, and abuse, because as we say, it don't have to be all fraud.
Yeah.
Yeah? It could be mismanagement, it could be bad decisions, but those cost the taxpayers financial revenue, whether it's private sector, state, and so on.
And if you may allow me, I'm just reading from just a matter that you would have dealt with in a Caribbean island, if I could mention Guyana.
Okay.
Yes. And
well, you'll pull that up from somewhere. Hopefully it was the media, but go ahead.
So, I mean, without calling names, in terms of recovery of a large sum of monies, I think it was over how much $1 million.
Yes.
How did that happen?
How do you recover money?
Yeah.
Well,
especially special organized crime, that is, the misappropriation of 600 and something million.
Oh, you're already reading the news.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, you have to understand that it's not that difficult, it might be tedious, but it's not that difficult. If you're trying to move $600 million, common sense will tell you that person is not moving that in any suitcase. It cannot go through any airport. And if the person is smart, then you don't want to put that in your local banking system. Good? Because your local banking system, and especially in the Caribbean, is small. May have no more than 7, 8 commercial banks, if so much. Good? So investigators could easily go through that in a day or a week. So it has to go overseas. How do you get money overseas? All money going overseas have to pass through a wire transfer. That means it's passing through the US system. Good? So it's just a matter of tracking and tracing. I'm not saying tracing is easy, because it have technicalities, you might put it in somebody else's name, but all money passes through the US system. So it's, that's the first level of tracing. There's always a trace.
But you often find that, yes, there's a trace, but some gets away, and
well,
some don't.
I mean, we have seen the getaway, and the getaway could be caused by a number of things. How long did you take to do the matter? Right? Did you take 10 years after you're now investigating? That sort of thing.
Right.
So obviously, especially in this modern situation, the money can move very fast. Yeah?
Yeah.
So time is a factor as well.
Now, in terms of your role in investigation, even your colleagues or whomever, is it that a forensic accountant is protected in terms of when they're investigating? Because I would imagine disclosing your name or disclosing, disclosure of your name or your company can have some risk factors.
Right.
Or in terms of mitigating those risks. How are those risks mitigated?
All right. So good question. As I said, most cases are linked to some governmental upline or regulator. The cases you're talking about, 9 out of 10 times, we are tagged on to law enforcement. Yeah? So especially internationally, you're tagged on to law enforcement. So the public or the powers that be are not actually seeing you. They're actually seeing the law enforcement. So if you go on for example, the FBI's website from time to time, you'll see a nice flashing advertisement, 3,000 forensic accountants needed. Good? So the forensic accountants in the backdrop and the law enforcement officers, they make the frontal interaction with who they need to speak to.
But then when it comes to, let's say, but when it comes to the court system, in terms of witness, being a witness in an investigation, or when a matter is investigated, you are charged, you are brought before the court.
Yes.
In terms of in a criminal or civil case, do forensic accountants give evidence?
Yes, they give evidence. Now that evidence, I tell my students, that doesn't mean so I'll give a ratio. Every 10 cases you do, or every 10 cases you have going through the court system, that don't mean you have to go physically and testify. The communication to the court, the main communication is your writing.
Yeah.
Right? That's your main communication. Once your writing is backed up by exhibits and appendices into how you have put together these facts, most likely, you will not be summoned to court.
That's in criminal proceedings.
Both criminal and civil.
But then well, it depends, because if you're an expert witness, then an expert witness, either whether or not
you can communicate to the court in writing.
Summary. Yeah, you can have.
Or you can. You can be called physically to the court, but you can communicate in your writings and your reportings and so on. So that's a form of communication. So it's not like every Sunday morning you're in court.
No, obviously.
Yeah.
And then civil matters are paper-based. Everything is based on
Paper-based
evidence.
and so on.
You have the hearsay, you have the expert, evidence.
Fact-based.
So I'm guessing
yes.
whomever is leading or whomever is the one that is a witness is whether the court would, or the defense may want to cross-examine. Because if the defense wants to cross-examine a piece of evidence, even if it's in writing, they have, they must be given the opportunity.
Yes.
Right, in terms of the due justice to cross-examine.
Yeah, but usually what could also happen, if your report is strong, your facts are strong, your support is strong, the defense won't cross-examine you. It may damage their case. Yeah. And also stick up in there internationally, because they do this so often, there are lawyers that specialize in white-collar crime and asset recovery. And they could speak more balance sheet and accounting than any accountant. You'll be amazed. I actually work with a lot of them. You'll be amazed, because that's all they do. They do white-collar cases. Yeah, they don't do no divorce thing, nothing like that.
So they have experience.
Yeah.
And a lot of time, it's not as though they even do courses on accounting. It's just because of the expertise.
Experience. And going through this thing over and over, specializing in the area. So if you have a case and you're under one of those lawyers during the litigation process, you don't need to go to court. They know what they're doing. Okay. They could represent the work.
Well, guys, let's take a pin right there. As Mr. Grey stated, we are watching Strictly Legal. We are going to take a break. We'll be right back. And we are back. You're watching Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. We are here with Mr. Stephon Grey, who is a lead forensic accountant. Well, he's an expert, basically, in his field. We are speaking about the role of forensic accountants in criminal and civil investigations. So while we were on the break, of course, we were discussing numerous different areas in which you would have worked. And one of the areas in terms of your involvement in investigating high-profile political fraud cases. Can you just shed some light in terms of an example of a famous case, maybe past? Well, I know you may not be able to discuss present litigating systems, but past cases or high-profile cases.
Definitely past.
Of course.
So, I mean, you have had a lot of past cases. But you'll do one from Trinidad that can be found online, and its summation can also be found. That is the Tesoro Johnny O'Halloran matter. We use that as a case study as well. So it's a matter that, as I said, it was one of the cases that coined this whole forensic accounting together. Because before you used to call it investigative accounting. And it's a matter that really brings everything together because it had the investigations, it had the asset tracing, and it had the recoveries. Yeah? You had a lot of assets found in Canada by the Canadian government. Actually, some countries it went to. So if you read the story online, it went through the courts of Panama.
Can you just give a brief synopsis in case because a lot of millennials and they may not even
it's a political case in Trinidad from back in the 70s, 80s, where it was alleged
O'Halloran, he was a politician also?
Well, yes, a politician. Yeah. And he siphoned a lot of money from Trinidad into coffers internationally. All right? And it went through at least 5 or 6 international courts, jurisdictions. Panama, Amsterdam, United States, Canada, and somebody missing. Yeah? And it also had a lot of asset recovery. Mr. O'Halloran himself gave up about $4 million Canadian dollars to the Canadian courts as part of his settlement. And the U.S. authorities calculated how much money that may have cost Trinidad and Tobago over the last 20 years of its duration. And it was billions of dollars when you calculate it in today's currency. Yeah? So it's a case where it shows you the economic loss to a country. It also shows you when you have losses of that magnitude to taxpayers, more than likely that money did not stay in the country. So you call that economic leakage. It went probably to the benefit of another country. Yeah? Because if I take money from here, if I steal money from here, the treasury here, and I send it to Switzerland, that's the benefit of Switzerland, where I buy boats, investments, and so on. So the money is leaked from one country to the next. That is why you have, for example, African countries, rich in resources, but very poor, or the majority of their working class is below the poverty line because the funds are removed. No one at that high level, and that's common sense, no one at that high level will steal money and leave it in the country. According to local parlance, the place too small.
Yeah.
So 9 out of 10 times, Sanya Bacha, and there's a case, my firm in the UK was involved in Baker and Partners. Sanya Bacha just 3 years ago, 20 years after his death, £20 million was returned or confiscated in the island of Jersey. Yeah, and you could see that in online media. Mm-hmm. Right? And that's 20 years after his death. His total loot is calculated about $5 billion US.
Oh, so therefore that's his estate, they would have taken that from his estate?
Well, no. That would have been parked in different places around the world. Yes, some could have been in his estate, because one of why is it the benefit of another country is because what you're going to do with, as a politically exposed person, with $2 million in a foreign jurisdiction, right? You stole the money, you park it there in terms of offshore banking and so on. Well, you're a lawyer. Would you will that to your estate?
Of course not.
Exactly.
Why am I even answering that question?
Probably you could, but you have to have some real good lawyers to explain. I just stole $2 billion, and I would like to leave it for my estate. That's hard to explain. So usually you have some countries benefiting because if you die or you are out of, so let's start with your debt. If you die and there's no will, and that is sitting in a jurisdiction's bank account. Yeah. After a couple of years, just as your normal banking, that account could be dormant. And once it's dormant and closed, its balance could be emerged or submerged in the economy of that country. Yeah? If you lose political power, because what happened with your diplomatic passport, you may be able to travel and put things in your suitcase that you will not be able to do as a normal citizen. Good? So if you lose political power, that could also cause you not to be able to access those funds. Right? If you lose political power, that could also cause you not to have the assistance to move those funds.
Because sometimes really power, political power, is not just about servicing people, but it's about the perks that comes with it for you to do.
Well, I'm not sure what perks you're talking about.
Well, those type of perks, right? Such as having a diplomatic passport and being able to move funds and being able to
whistle, but you know.
transfer things in the diplomatic pouch.
And so on. So, for example, practical example, when you had a situation where the same Nigerian official, when he died, his wife tried to move money in suitcases through a particular airport. And if you look at the story that is available online as well, you realize that she was stopped because he died. So your diplomatic pouch ran out, or your diplomatic status ran out. She was about 15 minutes too late. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so, you know, she was held at it because she now was subject to search. Yeah. So that played a part. So that's an example that tells you about the diplomatic status. Yeah.
So you mentioned offshore accounts.
Yeah.
Now, can offshore accounts be, well, yes, you can trace funds. I'm assuming you can trace funds that has been transferred to an offshore account. But does a country has a jurisdiction to take that monies out of that offshore account back to, can they recover, I should say?
Yeah, well, they have to go through the legal process.
But then offshore accounts are really designed to hide
very
money.
hard to break through. Yes, because some countries, let's call a spade. Some countries will financially benefit from it.
Like how can you transfer an offshore? How can you transfer or recover money from a Cayman offshore account that is alleged where most persons hide their assets?
Well, the lawyers will have to, a lot of subpoenas, your asset tracing have to be on point, because in those some of those offshore jurisdictions, the bank account does not have to be in your name. The bank account can be held in trust. Lawyers, the nominees could be lawyers. Yeah. Some are held in funds managed by the law firms. That's why you have the Panama Papers leak. What the Panama Papers leak is the information from the law firm that was leaked that will have told the officials, that this account here really belongs to Donawa and not X fund.
Right.
Who are the owners of X fund? And that's where you branch off now, and you have this new thing with beneficial ownership. Yeah. Yeah. Beneficial ownership really means there is no way for the authorities to legally tie you in to the ownership. Yes. But you know, they have
beneficial ownership after death. Well, I mean, the beneficial owner until it's transferred. After death.
So or there's a lot of work that goes into actually asset tracing into those jurisdictions, because they make it very unfriendly. Yeah?
I think that's why the laws have passed, and there are so many new regulations with the cross system, the Companies Act, whereby now you have to declare who's your beneficial owner, who's the shareholder, and you know, all these different forms that you have to complete. And I guess that's a way to tackle white-collar crime.
Well,
a way for the small man.
It's a way to start.
Right? Okay.
Because what is happening is you are filling out your beneficial ownership form or those forms, and when you fill that out and submit it, there's no process that verifies what I'm putting on the paper, the information. Yeah? So that's why sometimes when you start to do the asset tracing and you get the forms and you now verify the information, half of the times it may not be accurate. Good? So let's be realistic. Let's be realistic. You are the beneficial owner of a company that has siphoned $5 million US from your state coffers. Would you, Donawa, right, put your name down as the beneficial owner?
Of course, this is just scenario-based.
A scenario-based. Would you do that? You're a lawyer. Right? Most likely the answer is no.
Well, yeah.
Because you know you have done something wrong.
Indeed.
Because if you voluntarily put your name down and you know you have done something wrong, so usually if you verify a lot of that information, the accuracy lies with the persons who have nothing to hide. Someone with something to hide will not put down the correct information. And when that information is submitted to the state, and when I say state, I don't mean Trinidad because it's universal.
Yes.
There's no verification process in most jurisdictions. Some jurisdictions have now started to put verification processes so that they know that the information they are receiving is in fact correct at the point in time of receipt.
So therefore, what is the success rate of forensic accounting investigation?
Success rate?
Yes.
No, well, we have a very high success rate. I would say 110%. The question you want to ask is, what is the success rate after? Is there
yes,
success
as we are
after,
following
right?
up, yes.
So, you know,
in litigation, that is.
Yeah, in litigation,
Yeah.
it's high.
Right.
So the question is...
And success rate of recovery?
Very high once you go after it, yeah.
Okay.
I would say about 75% once
Right.
you have things there. The question that pushes that is your political will or the will of the client to see it through.
Gotcha.
You understand?
And the monies that are being expended
Exactly.
to actually go through this
Then
process.
you have a next situation where you have to actually spend money to go after your lost money.
Well, this is it. Attorneys, forensic
that-
accountants, so I'm sure probably their
That may
fees
not
are,
be attractive.
and your fees are probably more than attorneys.
Well, I wish you tell me.
Your forensics, you know.
Yeah, so that may not be attractive to the person who have lost or the state who have lost. You've just lost 5 million, have to spend 3 million to go after the 5 million and so on. So
Because you're hiring like senior counsels, you're hiring the best of the best.
the best, you have to hire the
Correct,
best
and you
of the
have to-
best.
yeah,
So there's a number of factors that goes into what goes on after. You can have political will that it just doesn't exist. The case was done to just throw some dirt on our next political side and not really intended to go further.
I mean, Trinidad.
I did not call any. I did not call any.
I mean, it is facts that have
I am
been
speaking
that
from
have
an
been,
international point of view.
but it's facts that are recorded. You know, particularly with AGC and all these different. I mean, just an example of past political witch hunts that have got nowhere. You know, famous example of that building somewhere. What's the building's name? Up in,
What building?
The Balance, as a famous
So,
union
ladies
man
and
would say.
gentlemen, that is the statements of Mr. Donawa,
Of
attorney
course.
at law.
which is public information, right?
I'm speaking from an international perspective.
that's the media defense.
But
Public information.
if we say something that is an international pattern that exists here,
course.
you're free to whistle.
Indeed.
Yeah, so you usually have, to go a step further, you may have major cases in any country, and you'll see it not being done unless one government changes. That's one pattern. The second pattern you will see, or may see, is that when a government is in train in their term, you'll never see them investigate themselves. All right? So that's a second pattern that...
Unless they want to get one of their members out.
You whistling, not me.
Yeah.
Right? So it's very rare to find that. You more find that in international territories, outside of third world countries, that is, because they have systems that are truly independent. Yeah? And funded properly. The funding is very important. So sometimes we blame law enforcement, but they are not funded for those type of exercises. Yeah. I've been to countries where the white-collar agencies under law enforcement are only funded for recurring expenses, not for specialized funding. And what could happen as well is that you're telling the head of these agencies, for specialized funding, you have to come back to Parliament. Good?
Yeah.
So let's put that down to common sense. You are the senior state official. You're leading you have colleagues. You're in office, and I am the chairman of some integrity commission, some white-collar agency, and I'm coming to you to ask for a supplementary budget to investigate members of your team. How would you answer me? Good? Most likely that's not going to happen. Yeah. So they're not funded holistically. They are funded with recurring budget with permission or application for specialized budgets to do specialized exercises. And that doesn't work.
And by the time you finish the debate on this and approve, that money done gone somewhere so far that you...
Yeah. So, and in this modern day, it's all about speed.
Correct.
So, for example, I was asked in Jamaica, it's actually online, when Usain Bolt lost his $12 million. And I told the Jamaican media that this is what day 10, day 11, then consider that gone. Because you're in 2023. You don't have to go to the bank to move money. You move money from this bank on your phone.
And you have the whole Bitcoin.
Yeah, so if the investigators did not have a handle on that money in 4 days, that's it. And then when you talk about moving money, I can make it difficult for you as the perpetrator. I can move money in a jurisdiction that has no friendly MLAT with the host country or with the United States. They're not on friendly terms. I can move money in a jurisdiction that may be on half-friendly terms but don't speak the language.
Oh.
That's difficult. That causes delays. Right? So
that's why you find many people move their monies to Russia.
Well, yeah, you can use countries that don't speak your host language. So imagine you send your lawyers and the investigators from your host country into those countries, and you have to get interpreter this or learn some of the language yourself, or try to translate documents. That takes time. And that time does not reconcile with the speed that an individual in this current day and age could move money.
So therefore we are saying, and the question is in terms of some of the challenges that forensic accountants face when conducting investigation.
Yeah.
So one of the challenges is speed? Or
Well,
is it that speed?
Your client speed,
Your client speed.
your client speed. We had a matter where somebody was moved from a state agency, not in Trinidad, don't get excited, all right, of the energy sector. And we, in 3 days, we were able to track the money down to a certain jurisdiction in the United States. We know exactly which bank, we know exactly whose name it is in. But we're in a modern time. When we submitted that, the board indicated to us, well, we're meeting in 2 weeks. You know,
You have to be urgently.
in 2 weeks, that money gone, and so said, so done. You understand? Obviously, the board of that country, state enterprise didn't understand that, because when I surveil their ages, they are not even in tune with how fast things are moving now.
Yeah.
So it's all about your client's understanding of what may require speed, what may require extra budgeting, and that is very vital. Yeah. So, for example, even in let's go back to the 80s, the O'Halloran matter, you'll see that the literature tells you that it could have been a worse matter had it not been for statute of limitations. That is what evidence you can bring forward past 4 years or past 6 years or what have you. It actually said it in the Canadian courts.
But it depends, because if I'm assuming that at that time that was a civil investigation.
Of course, criminal.
Yeah, of course, criminal, there's no statute of limitation. But in terms of recovery, if you want to recover in a civil jurisdiction, obviously there's a time limit, and there's a limitation period, as we know. Now, in terms of with the advancement of technology, you know, how do you foresee the role of forensic accountants, particularly when it comes to technology such as artificial intelligence, etc.?
Whether it will aid it or
whether it will aid it or whether it will,
definitely
create a pitfall.
No. Well, everything has an advantage and a disadvantage, right? So, for example, it will aid it in terms of being able to get information, but it will be a disadvantage because you do not know who is behind certain things. So, for example, all the asset recovery conferences that are taking place monthly across the world right now are speaking about crypto. Crypto is the big topic now. Good?
Yeah.
Because we haven't gotten a handle of the normal processes with banking and paper yet, much less for somebody who you don't even know where they exist or where they're operating from, and they're operating an online money moving service or crypto.
Yeah.
That makes it hard. Yeah?
And crypto is Bitcoin.
Bitcoin,
Yeah.
whatever it is, with virtual money.
But and that's it. How can now? I mean, I'm assuming that you will now have to train in terms of tracing.
Yeah, a lot of training is going on. Yeah, a lot of discussions
yes.
are going on right now because it's moving faster. Well, it's still on the cards. It's being discussed internationally probably every month.
And I think one of the purpose of that type of currency is to avoid tracing.
Yeah, well. I don't know what's the purpose, but tracing, of course, will be very hard.
To trace and harder
very
to
hard,
steal.
yeah.
Right,
hard.
let me put it
because
that way.
If you have someone operating a virtual money site and they are in a jurisdiction in Iraq or some jurisdiction that is not friendly, then where's the offense taking place? The offense is taking place there, but it affects your country. So what laws are you using? So all of that is being discussed and by the forensic conferences and asset recovery conferences as we speak. Almost weekly.
It's a wide area because
it's a wide area. It's a new area.
What man makes, man could break
exactly,
easily and
then you're talking about the speed. The speed is, and then you're also talking about, what are the type of forensic or specialized investigators you are sending after these specialized techie.
Yeah, not the archaic type of investigation.
Yeah, exactly.
Not the 80-something-year-olds and the 70-something-year-olds who...
Even at my young age, I'm having difficulty. The technology is fast.
Yes, very fast.
It's very fast. You might be better suited training your young children to do it. Because
they might be
understand, they might be much quicker than us.
Correct.
So that's a new kettle of fish.
Correct.
And if we do start to see offenses like that in the third world countries or the Caribbean or African countries, if the developed countries are not even ready for it and they're having problems with it, you can imagine the massive problems that we will have.
And the willpower, the political will. Yeah, the political will.
You are called to the bar here.
Yes.
Only bar, is Brooklyn bar and these Frankies and so on when I mentioned that,
Oh my gosh. But of course, before we go, just tell us where we can find the Caribbean Institute of Forensic Accounting and whatever.
Well, there's a website, www.cifa-edu.com. So that's a website, or you can give us a call. The administrator at 766-7380, Marissa. Yeah. So easy to find, easy to Google, easy to find. May not be easily physical to find, but
Right, easy to find. Well, I mean,
we can be contacted.
We're dealing with forensics, so we have to be important. Thank you so much, Mr. Grey, for joining this set.
No problem.
I hope to speak with you soon when we have advanced our technology. in terms of speaking on forensic accounting and AI, I think that should be something that is evolving, and we should speak about it soon. So thank you so much once again.
Thanks for having me.
So guys, it's a wrap. You have been watching Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Don't forget to catch our replay and our podcast, Strictly Legal with Rondell Donawa. Before I go, I'll leave you with this quote: what you feed your mind with forms your characteristics. Take care. God bless.